Like many small tributaries, Squaw Creek carries the lifeblood of the West to the lands and homes of its inhabitants. Trees, birds, fish, mammals, grasses, and shrubs make their living at the water's edge. Like any typical creek, this one may look healthy on the surface, but it's not, as a landowner on its banks quickly found out.
We unfortunately had a building condemned, the museum was condemned, and we had to look for a new site. This property here in the north part of Lander fit all the criteria. It's a perfect spot, and one of the most important things about it is that it has a very natural environment. When we came out to look at what we had bought, we noticed that there has been tremendous stream bank erosion here, cavitation of the banks, where we really stood a chance of losing some valuable property should we have a flood. And in addition, it presented quite a hazard to our patrons. There were several floods here that probably contributed to the massive kind of an erosion, and natural vegetation is basically absent from this area. We would like to recreate the natural system here.
Jack States came into the office one day and was talking about the recent purchase of this property for the Museum of the American West. Problem that the museum discovered when they purchased this property, we had a lot of vertical banks, and there was a lot of erosion and just not very healthy riparian zones.
Squaw Creek drains water from the eastern slopes of the southern Wind River Mountains near Lander, Wyoming. The importance of water for humans, agriculture, wildlife, fish, and recreation becomes critical in the vast arid rangelands in the valley below.
We can look at natural stream banks and stream the water course and try to emulate what nature does over long periods of time.
The Poposia Conservation District provides community leadership by developing and implementing natural resource conservation programs.
We're demonstrating bioengineering techniques here on the Squaw Creek project, and bioengineering techniques are best management practices that are constructed of natural materials, living materials oftentimes. So we've used primarily willow in our bioengineering practices. The benefits of the bioengineering practices would be for erosion control, flood control, and sedimentation control. We're supplying living things back to the riparian area, and we're creating root masses, and we're creating pools and riffles for the fish habitat, and we're creating willow growth for the birds and for the other living creatures.
These students are studying natural resource management techniques at Lander Valley High School, and their apprenticeship as bioengineers begins by making vertical bundles.
We're trying to dig a trench here that goes below the water level, because our water right now is up a little bit from the weekend's warm weather and runoff from the mountains. And hopefully by having it below today's water level, that during low flows we have enough water to provide those new roots the necessary water to start developing and take hold. And by placing them here, we can kind of stabilize this bank that was pretty raw and eroding. And by placing the willows here, it's going to provide some root masses that will hopefully hold those banks. Also provide some shade and cover for some fish in here.
We're bundling all the willows that we cut last week so we can put them in the trench that they're doing. It'll ultimately help stabilize the bank when they start to grow. And by squaring these off as much as possible, then it'll get the water all at once, and then it'll probably root a little bit better. And each individual tree has a better expectancy of developing and growing into a real big tree.
These guys have already started their primary productivity because they've got their leaves already. So it won't take long. They've already got phloem moving through, and they're ready to roll. I don't think it'd be very long either. This is a undesirable non-native plant that sucks up too much water.
After the bank has been sloped to a gentle angle that will allow things to grow on it, native grass seed is planted to help hold sediment in place. At the end of the day, the vertical bundles are already wicking water up the slope, where it will be stored in roots and stream banks for the rest of the summer. And 5 months later, signs of new life.
Well, riparian area can pretty much just be, you need some sort of river system like this. Just depending on the health of a riparian area is, I guess, determines how good it'll be, you know.
The bioengineers continue upstream with a different erosion control technique.
What they're working on right now is called a willow mattress or a brush mattress. And we're hoping that rather than the rock riprap, this will help stabilize the stream bank during high flows. So we'll get all these willows placed as far as the water has already seeped up the bank. And then we'll use stakes and some wire to help push them in. So we'll want to tighten that wire as much as we can. They should sprout roots all the way along. Anywhere where you have a leaf node, if it's up against the soil, there's hormones in the plant that'll tell it to either grow a leaf or roots. As opposed to the currants, they grow in a big bunch, and the willows will just fill in, just like grass on a huge scale. Well, it's more attractive, it's more natural. Hopefully it will provide some fish habitat for the area and some cover for birds. But we could use a little more dirt on those.
It's a willow mattress. Willows and willows. The mattress of willows.
By the end of the summer, the willow mattress has blossomed into a healthy, stable stream bank. Other sections of the creek have different dynamics, which require different solutions.
And this is an area where we're going to try using what's called a root wad. This is a really excellent spot to try something like this just because of the way that the erosion has occurred here. Because we had some trash that managed to get caught right there, it slowed things down, and then they ended up with the deposition of material. This is one of the trees that we'll be using for a root wad. John will be placing this in the bank with the root mass itself facing upstream so that we have the water hitting it and dissipating the energy. There will be about 10 to 12 feet of the root trunk that will be placed into the bank so that we have it keyed back in so the water can't be washing around it. Where the tree was taken down, the water had eroded around the root mass itself. Eventually this tree probably would have fallen down and pretty much done what we're going to do naturally, but we're accelerating the process. The other thing that a root wad will do is provide some habitat for the fisheries. As you can see where the trash is there, there's approximately a foot to a foot and a half fall there, so we're going to need some way to continue to dissipate the energy which the trash right now is doing.
A vortex rock weir is constructed in a V shape pointing upstream. When the current hits it, the weir creates a pool that absorbs energy and slows down the water. The rock weir and root wad combination make inviting fish habitat.
Okay, what we're going to do is try to get an estimate of the number of fish that are in this section, figure out what the number of fish are, and then we can expand it for the whole area.
Biologists Kevin Johnson and Joe Daramidi from the Wyoming Game and Fish Department use electrofishing to help the students collect data on the number of fish, the species, and their size. Having this information, both before and after the habitat improvement work, will help them monitor changes in the fish population over time.
That's what Joe has on his back. It's a battery-powered electrofishing unit which puts out direct current. Fields put out. The fish are actually attracted toward that positive field through an involuntary muscle reaction. They'll actually swim right toward that positive. When they get close enough and get enough of a current going through their body, it'll actually stun them. They'll turn belly up and we can net them. A little sucker. Probably got about 8 or 10 brown trout and a couple suckers. Okay, first one's a brown trout. 9.9 inches. And the weight is in pounds and tenths of pounds and hundredths of pounds. 0.40, so 0.40 pounds. Like I said, these fish are in good shape. They're fat, so they haven't been overly stressed or anything from the environment. They've been feeding well and look healthy. Brown trout are a fall spawner, and especially if you go up behind the high school in the fall, you can see where they've been digging redds in the gravel. And this area through here has a lot of nice gravels on the riffles. Once they're cleaned up a little bit, should make good spawning habitat for trout through here as well. Brown trout, 9.1. Didn't get any of the last year's production, which we often see up above. So when your willow plantings and stuff like that really take off, we'll probably produce some habitat for those younger fish.
Back at the Lander Valley High School, students are busy building fish lunkers to provide even more attractive fish habitat.
They're going to put a fish lunker in this area here. And then for me as a fisheries person, and particularly with the brown trout, that's the fish species that we have here, that creates an undercut bank effect that really just is like a big magnet to brown trout. They really like nice dark areas to hang out in. They're anchored into the bottom of the stream bed and then into the bank. And what's going to be neat for people who come in here and look at the museum, if they want to come see fish, a lot of these other things, you might see a glimpse of a fish here. When we're done and this is done as I imagine, you should be able to almost come down here about any time and look underneath this and say, oh, there's the fish here, there's the fish there.
Around a long bend, yet another bioengineering technique is underway.
What we've created here is a willow wattle, and what we're going to do is tie it at every 18 inches and make a nice tight sausage-like bundle that we're going to then take down and set into this trench that we've created at the water level, and then we'll stake that down.
Community members join the PACD, the Lander Children's Museum, and the Museum of the American West board members to install a willow wattle.
There we go. All right, let's just set it right down in there. Right in the water. Right on the ledge. No, they need all of that way. Can we just roll it in? Yeah. These willows are going to sprout, and then we'll have a real matrix of roots that are going to help stabilize this bank.
A rock barb is positioned in the stream below the willow wattle to create a deep eddy that will divert water away from the bank and into the middle of the channel. The eddy effect attracts fish and other wildlife. Beavers are riparian ecosystem engineers.
It's really hard for beavers to make use of the Russian olives to make their dam building material. So we're really missing the whole two things that you need for a stable beaver population is good food supply and dam building material. Willows is really their primary food source. And then it'd be nice if we had aspen or cottonwoods or something like that here for their dam building material. You want something bigger so their dams would be more stable.
Our bioengineers are going to plant cottonwood poles in the natural floodplain to improve the habitat.
This is a lower spot that's certainly part of the riparian area. Remember, a riparian area is a ribbon of green that kind of follows the waterway. Because this is low and pretty wide, the water table is pretty high right here. So what we've done here is cut down some poles and cut off all the branches and kept them moist. And now we're putting them into the dirt here. And the groundwater table will come up in the springtime every year. So hopefully within, probably this year, they'll start sprouting some twigs and some leaves. Certainly by next year, they'll be really going.
The cottonwoods will provide dam building material for the beavers and habitat for migrating songbirds.
The Department of Environmental Quality, in effort to achieve their mission of protecting and improving resources in Wyoming, works cooperatively with a number of agencies, individuals, and groups such as the Poposia Conservation District. DEQ provides both financial, through Section 319 support for this project. They've provided some technical assistance through our water quality monitoring staff and an educational component, again, through funding. When an average citizen comes down and looks at these practices, they may not understand the technology behind them, but they understand the value of this watershed to their community, and they may have a better understanding of how a watershed functions and why it's important.
The Museum of the American West has a little logo that says, remember the past and look to the future. That's exactly what we want to do for education and preservation of our cultural heritage.
This community project highlights the Poposia Conservation District's mission to sustain the quality of our natural resources for future generations.